with you, only you. A cosmic dance, the truth so true. From the ether to the earthly plane, all you see, you can attain. The quantum flow, the light you hold, creates the story that will unfold. Every thought and step you make, the universe is yours to take. It starts with you, the mirror's hue, infinite skies reflecting you. From the void, you birth the light. Through the shadows, your soul takes flight. The winds will shift, its timeless bend. Every cycle begins again. Your energy builds, it flows, it streams, aligning rims, igniting your dream. Each vibration, each sacred sound, a universe moves resound. You are the spark, divine and true, illuminating. It's all you do. Just remember, it starts with you, the mirror's hue, infinite skies reflecting you. From the void, you birth the light. Through the shadows, your soul ignites. The path within, the path divine. Through space, your world aligns. Every rise, every fall, you're connected to it all. It starts with you, the quantum view, manifesting dreams like the morning dew. From the stillness, creation flows. Through the darkness, your spirit knows. It starts with you, only you. Through dimension, through the veil, the sacred truth, and you prevail. Now infinite, clear, and true. This road ahead, it's made for you. It all begins and ends with you. Even the chaos, through the flame, you rise anew, never the same. Every heartbeat, every sign weaves your essence, soaring high. The cosmos bends to your command. Creation blooms within your hand. It starts with you, only you, only you. It starts with you. Welcome in the space, family. Happy Sunday. Come in and hold space with your girl. Get in the building. Let's hold some space tonight. It's Sunday. We're going to get these disclosures on the way so that we can get this thing started. I share my own personal experiences on my journey to healing. I am not a licensed professional, nor do I claim to know everything. I do this for entertainment purposes only. So if it don't apply, let it fly. If some apply and some don't, eat the meat and spit out the bones. If all of it applies, eat it all and apply the knowledge. Topic tonight, robbing Peter to pay Paul. This one's going to be good. I know I said it about everything, but I mean it about everything. Let's get into these intentions. Let's get these intentions on the way. Y'all say hello as y'all come in this space. We're going to get these intentions on the way so that we can unpack tonight, so that I can unpack this with myself if I need to. We're going to take a deep breath. And I invite you to stand in this space with me and feel it. As we go on this journey of unfolding, let us enter the space you once bartered before belonging, for love, for safety. We don't gather just to listen. We gather to remember what was traded and to call it back, to confront the emotional overdrives we were told was love, to name debts that was inherited, to say clearly with full authority, I refuse to keep robbing my spirit to pay for someone else's comfort. I refuse to borrow silence when my voice is truth. I refuse to change my body with burdens that began before me, that began before that's not even mine to carry. Let me put that in there. I stand in a lineage of broken contracts of my mother who couldn't stay, of my father who wouldn't hold, of institutions that traded my aunt for power. But I am not the residue. I am the remedy. I no longer rob my present to uphold a past that no longer serves me. And no longer just that. I no longer need those things because I am not a child any longer. I let Peter rest and I tell Paul the performance is over. We stand in today's truth. I stand in today's truth. And in this, I have an awareness that it all started with me and yours start with you. And I say, and so it is. Get in the building, family. Happy, happy Sunday. I'm going to be on my vibe. I'm going to be jamming tonight. You come in and hold space. If you wish to remain anonymous, I keep forgetting that every time. If you wish to remain anonymous or you have something that you want to say and you don't want to make it public, send it to my inbox. I'm always watching so that I can be, if you want to remain anonymous, I can actually say it for you, read it for you without people knowing who you are if you choose to. So let's get into it tonight. I'm spreading the good news. I decided I'm going to be the advocate for spreading the good news. And I'm the only one that's spreading this news that I've seen, besides a couple. So welcome back into the space where there's no shame, blame, or judgment. However, we do hold ourselves and one another accountable. Last week we unpacked the topics of "Oh ye hypocrite," and it was so beautifully done. I ate. I hope you did too. We didn't call out the loud hypocrisy. No, we went deeper than that. We went after the ones that whisper, the ones that creep around quietly, the kind that lives in your chest and it splits you in two. I'm speaking about the inner division. When the person you pretend to be don't align with who you are. So Ty, what happens when your mouth says I'm healed, but your body still flinches in the places where you trusted and where that trust was broken? When your lips say I forgive you, but your spirit is still bleeding in silence. That's what I'm talking about tonight. That's the crack in the armor. That's the moment the mask slips and the truth starts whispering through your own contradiction, saying to you in your ear, this don't feel right. This don't seem right. That's the moment the mask slips. And that's the truth start whispering through your own. And those contradictions are what led me here tonight. Because for too long, I'm going to say I. You say you too. I'm going to say I've been borrowing clarity from performances that I've done, borrowing power from perfection, borrowing identity from trauma, just to keep functioning in the system that keep us fragmented. That's what the old folks used to say. You robbing Peter to pay Paul. Now, I never really understood what that meant. But tonight I'm going to unpack this, and not just on a surface level. Because we now we use it where, we hear the phrase, and use it loosely like we're talking about money. But tonight we're going to go take it deeper than that. So y'all come in and hold space for this because this is going to be beautiful. I'm going to try to finish it before 2 hours. So when I'm talking about robbing Peter to pay Paul, I'm not just talking about dollars. I'm also talking about the energy, time, boundaries, identity, spiritual currency. But the truth is, When you're constantly borrowing from one part of yourself to uphold another, you're not living integrated. And integrated just means connected. Let me take you back. You're not living. You're surviving on spiritual credit. And that interest will always come due. Ty, I can recognize that you know interest, how it shows up in finance, but how does it show up in your life? I have a list. Y'all know I love lists. I love lists, and I'm gonna unpack that for us tonight. First, I got a question. Have you ever borrowed energy from tomorrow just to survive today? If so, let's talk about that. Let's have those hard conversations you, let's have the hard conversation that nobody wants to talk about. Because here's the thing, every loan comes with interest, whether they tell you that or not. And I'm not just talking about, again, money. I'm talking about emotional debt, spiritual overdraft. So not just physical, but we're going to look at this thing metaphysically. Your psyche cannot sustain inner contradiction forever. If you constantly trade truth for approval, clarity for chaos, you will eventually collapse. Not because you're weak, but because the lie gets so heavy. The soul demands balance, and Peter, though quiet, will not be robbed without consequences. I know we might not want to admit that, but a lot of us have been robbing that peace to keep others comfortable. You rob your rest to keep producing. You rob your truth to keep the peace. You rob your worth to be loved. But that interest always is going to come back. And if you don't pay the piper, there are consequences. Let me show you how. You bottle up that anger to avoid the conflict. Then you explode over something small. And you say yes to the things that you really meant no to. And later you become resentful and you feel drained. And it shows up later by you keeping keeping that peace internally, but inside there's a war going on. This is why I ask people to tell me who's keeping the peace. Like, who am I keeping this peace for? Is it for me or is it for the other person? Because oftentimes you will perform like you're okay, but your body knows that you're not. I'm telling you from experience. I know what it's like to have things bottled up and become a snowball effect. This is why you have these misalignments and your body stays sick all the time. And that's debt. It builds up in your chest, in your nervous system, in your health, in your body. It keeps the score. And even when you're not, your body never lose memory of that. Your relationships, your spirit. So I'm gonna put a pause in this thing right here. And I want us to sit with some questions that I want you to ask yourself. Am I telling the truth or just saying what feels safe? We're gonna unpack this. What am I giving away that I never had enough of myself? That's a powerful question. Where am I pretending just to be accepted? And what would happen if I stopped performing? This isn't just about blame. Here, family, it's about honesty. Because you can't heal what you're still denying. And you can't stop paying interest on debt you won't admit exists. But once you see it, you can shift it. So tonight, let's unpack the uncomfortable truths that we don't want to sit with ourselves. Topic tonight, robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're going to go deep like we always do. So I asked myself, where do I start? Where can you begin, Ty, to unpack this so you can actually minister to yourself? So I'm going to start with the origin. I oftentimes tell y'all, let's start with the origin. We're going to go back to the origin. This topic started with the word borrowed. And what does it mean to be borrowed? I've heard of borrowed tune. I heard on borrowed time, but borrow means past tense of borrow. To take something temporarily with the intention of returning it. You borrow a book from the library. You borrow clothes from a family member. You borrow words from other cultures and other language. You borrow money on credit, expecting to pay it back. Originating in Old English, the word bargain. It implies a mutual pledge and exchange grounded in responsibility. This is why we have to go back to the origin family. I say this all the time because we've twisted borrowing what it means and not taking into without taking it into accountability of what shows up with that. We're turning sacred, making sacred exchanges into one-sided bondage, slavery. So let's start with Peter. From the Greek word Petrus. Go look it up, meaning rock or stone, foundation stability and truth, your present self. And I got to thinking about that. We're going to pack that. I'll get to that later. I won't get off track. But Peter is foundational stability, the grounding, the unwavering, that part of you that shows up in your inner truth, your spiritual core, and that personal revelation. Come on here, Ty. Everything has to connect. And that's what it's going to do over here. And they were strategic with making sure you wouldn't go and study and show yourself approved. So I'm going to give it to you how you need to hit it. Peter is just the you that is. Peter is the one that was there before Adam partook, when everything just was everything. There was no separation. There was no duality. That's who Peter shows up as. But Paul, on the other hand, from the Latin word Paulus, meaning small or humble, Paul is the ego death, conversion. Paul represents the performer, the one who preaches well, but had the fall to find truth. He also represented institutions, missions, and often religious systems that came before disconnection from the original spirit, Peter. That's so beautiful. Peter was before, Paul was after. But let's not stop there. Let's go deeper. Peter is the foundation, your truth, your instinct, your wholeness. Paul is the performance self, your learned behavior, your religious role, your ego-led mission. When you rob Peter to pay Paul, you're taking from the truth to fund your performance. Family expectation, cultural survival. You're sacrificing your route to uphold an image. You're putting on a face for the crowd. You tired and you smile in the church while starving spiritually. What happens when you borrow from Peter's account and it goes overdraft? Peter shuts down. And scripture even wants us to believe. It says, "Oh, no man anything but to love one another." And because we were taking this literally, we miss it. But tonight we're not missing anything. We're holding ourselves accountable for overstanding because, oh, ye hypocrites, when you're giving it to people is imbalanced. But it's convenient when you want to use it. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, because many pastors indulge in borrowing millions of dollars, having mansions. Ty, I'm not borrowing millions. Okay, let me fix it. You borrowing hundreds. Are you a thousandaire? Are you borrowing thousands? But you in return lend guilt to your people for their last $20, and they'll call it faithfulness because I'm giving you my last. But in my eyes, the original law of balance was you can lend and borrow with integrity. Y'all doing it anyway. You're doing it anyway. Reciprocity, family, is sacred. But here, in this doctrine, it's one-sided, where debt becomes bondage and slavery. Tonight, we're tracing how borrowing without return shows up in your life, how spiritual psychosis takes root when that doctrine demands that you rob Peter to fund Paul. I'm jamming too. Welcome in, family. Happy Sunday. Turn this up just a little bit. And now we got to work on how do we work on reclaiming our wholeness through the original pledge of mutual obligation. It's in the relationship. It's in the relationship. So let's go deep, because real freedom begins when you stop treating our souls like ATM machines, because it's not. Oh, no man, nothing, anything, but to love one another. Now, look, some folks will twist that verse, they'll weaponize it to guilt you. They'll say it means always pouring, always give, always lay yourself down. But I thought Jesus was the last sacrifice. So why are you asking me to sacrifice myself? It's the trap of performance-based worth. Look it up. Performance-based worth. It's the unspoken rule. Be everything. Expect nothing. But when you go deeper, not just physical, but metaphysical, I know y'all don't like when I say that word. Let's see what it looks like and how it's in contradiction to your healing. How the system tells you to owe no man anything, but the demand you spiritually bankrupt yourself to do exactly what it tells you not to do. Watch this. In church, you tithe faithfully. You're the assistant pastor. You sing in the choir. You're an usher. You're a faithful member. Whatever you're assigned to do. But the moment you ask for help, they say, pray about it. You're told your suffering is spiritual warfare. You're told to fast more, submit more, silence yourself more. All along, you're spiritually hemorrhaging. You're bleeding out. You're leaking. But they want you to keep bleeding quietly as long as the pews stay full and that image stays polished. That's not discipleship. That's spiritual manipulation. Like, seriously. How is it that we don't see the contradictions in that? Because I don't, Miss Ty. Let me give it to you a different way. Maybe a different way that you can resonate with. What about family? You're always the strong one, the fixer, the peacemaker. They always coming to you when everything's falling apart. But when you fall apart, it's crickets. Nobody checks in. Nobody prays for you. Nobody sees the fatigue in your eyes or into how tired you are in your body. Yet you keep showing up. You keep over-functioning. You keep betraying your own exhaustion just to help the family from falling apart. That's not love. That's emotional bankruptcy in the name of loyalty. Wait a minute, Ty. You know what's funny? The church will quote Romans 3:18 like it's a commandment carved in stone. Oh, no man, nothing. But to love one another. But wait, that ain't cool at all until it takes time for the church to get along. It ain't okay. It ain't okay in no other sense. Then suddenly the word of God got a loophole. I'm so sick of these loopholes y'all create. You're always moving the goalposts. Then suddenly the word of God turns into this free fall. I can do what I choose. Do we understand what that means? You preaching that debt is sin, but you're the first one in line to sign up for a 30-year mortgage and say, in Jesus' name. They got you out here financing houses. Your car is leased. And I'm saying lease because you never own it. You never actually own anything. Go and look it up. That's what they don't tell us. You think you done paid out that house? Lies. That's what you're doing. It says, owe no man nothing. That means the bank, family members, friends, nobody, anything, or nothing means zero, zilch, nada. This is why the pastor make y'all pay for their stuff outright. And don't say you ain't doing it, because I seen it. Pay for the pastor card in cash. And you swear up and down it's not happening. But I seen it. And not just once. And don't play like you don't know what I'm talking about. I just watched a video just the other day. This woman was telling her story, how she got kicked out of church, not for stealing, not for sinning, but for questioning foolishness that was happening. Let me share with you what the lady said. She said the pastor wanted the whole congregation to worship her. The pastor said God told her that every time she walked in the room, from the door to the chair, that is, that they were supposed to be clapping the whole time while she was walking in. And that story hit me and resonated so fully and whole with me, because that's what y'all doing. Stand up and welcome the pastor. Clap. Not only that, they would take this woman's shoes off. As she went to go sit down, they treated her like Cinderella. They would take off her shoes. This is what y'all doing. That's not a question. Not long ago, I seen one of y'all run across the choir stand to get a Bible for somebody, almost tripped and fell and bust your mouth wide open. Y'all acting like you're serving God. You're serving the pastor is equivalent to serving God. But anyhow, I got off track. Welcome in, family. She goes on to say that it was about to be the pastor's 35th anniversary. And apparently God told this pastor, this is what the pastor is telling these ministers. God told her that she deserved the ring. Not just any ring, a ring that had 35 diamonds in it, one for every year of service. So she pulled her ministers together and said, now listen, we're not going to ask the members to help because they wouldn't understand this calling that's on my life. Translation, i.e., they're going to have some questions if we ask them. So all 26 of them agreed to pitch in. Each one offered $100. That was $2,600. And they thought they was doing something. They was popping it. So they submitted this plan to her. 26 people, $2,600. She sent it back to them. Told them that it was insulting that they come with her with this offer and said that God said that this ring need diamonds, baby. Y'all know I put my own thing on it. But she said, no, that's not going to work. Y'all trying to give me dollar store rhinestones. They was thinking too small. So guess what they did? They came up with this other plan. The other idea to put this said ring on layaway. Yes, layaway for the Lord. And the payments were so steep. So naturally, one of the young ladies that was a minister raised concern. She said, what if I got monthly bills and I come up short and I can't afford to pay for my payment that month? You know what these people told her? Figure it out. Because those type of sacrifices pleases the Lord and it honors your pastor. Ma'am, not the Lord requiring layaway sacrifices. So the other lady said to her, the one that got kicked out the church, she said, don't you dare make a payment on a ring if you can't pay your light bill? And what did they do? They told her that she was so in discord, told her to sit down and hush, then asked her to leave. Let me say this loud and clear. This is the mess y'all put up with. That's not a question. That's not a question. That's a statement, because I've seen it. And then folks wonder why the first lady always walking around mad, looking like, like she mad y'all ain't worshiping her loud enough. Getting mad because the birthday gifts that y'all buy her ain't birthdaying. And you're doing it. I'm not off topic. Topic tonight, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Let me give it to you. Based off of this story, Peter, that's your peace. That's you being able to pay your bills without worry, your dignity, your discernment. Paul, the image. What will the pastor say? What's going to happen to the pastor's ego, the pastor's anniversary ring? And when you start taking from your actual needs to keep up with someone else's, that's spiritual fantasy. That's a form of bondage. It's spiritual manipulation, and they dress it up as faith. And it's how colonial religion keeps you broke, tired, and quiet. It teaches you to pour out your cup until you got nothing left. And they're going to call it obedience. You're being obedient with God. But obedient to who? Because that's lies. Because I cannot recall anywhere where Jesus was asking somebody to have to give them 35 diamonds and a shoe concierge. But what I do call him doing is him flipping over tables when y'all was in the temple. Y'all got this hustle turning on. Got y'all turning this into a hustle. If I was still subscribed to this foolishness, I could not wait till Jesus Jr. show up to flip over y'all tables. Because in my eye, there's no foolishness like that going on. Because it's about balance. It's about reciprocity, truth, and divine order. It doesn't demand you worship. It demands harmony. Ma'at says, yes, you can borrow. Yes, you can lend. But not if it puts you in bondage, not if it puts you in a hard spot and it sacrifices others in their pride. Not if it's distorted, the flow of justice and mutual respect. And my keeps the scales even. And you don't have to take from one side to give to the other, because there's more available on each side. There's more abundance. And that's when you can benefit people, other people can benefit from your overflow. That's when you can actually give an offering with a cheerful heart, because it cycles through and that keeps repeating itself. So don't come talking about you feeding the homeless and the widows now. I see you. Because Ty done poked a hole. Matter of fact, not even a hole. I done tore down a wall in this tithing system. And that ain't how it works. And tell people y'all don't see what we do behind closed doors. Why is that? Why they don't? You're loud about the other shit. Tell the truth, because you still want them to believe that their giving is faithfulness, because you dress it up in scripture. Family, they want you to believe that the pain you're experiencing is proof that God was working. But God isn't about abuse. And you don't have to keep tithing your trauma to prove you believe. Don't let your spiritual leader demand loyalty while offering no accountability for himself. They're supposed to make known what the funds are used for. And I'm talking at that time, back then, because they took that away from them. Because according to text, the only ones that could be priests anyway was the Levites. I would love to see the genetics On kinship, you share with the Levites. Not only that, tithing had a specific use. Items that were used for tithing was grain and wine, olive oil, livestock, cattle, sheep, goats, first fruit of crop, not money, honey, figs, dates, etc. All kinds of agricultural products. The tithes was a system of care, not for profit. It was meant for the Levite priests because they had no land or inheritance and served the tabernacle or the church temple. And the poor was including widows, orphans, and foreigners, strangers. So when tithes started popping out, telling y'all this is who it's for, now all of a sudden this is what y'all doing. It was supposed to be for the community festival to feed the people during holy feasts and gathering. Not money, food for those who didn't have land. But when the Roman systems got mixed into the church, money replaced that. It replaced those resources, and those hierarchy replaced care and caring for people. And tithing became a transaction instead of a community covenant. An exchange, reciprocity is supposed to be how it worked. Tithing was never meant to fund mansions or sound systems. It was a way to nourish the people who couldn't nourish themselves. But today's model often looks more like exploitation than empowerment. Listen, my aunt says, do not rub your own peace don't disrupt your own peace to uphold a system that robs your spirit. Come on here, Ty. Stop playing with me. Topic tonight, robbing Peter to pay Paul. And nothing's right about that. And there's nothing you can do about me I'm being quiet. There's nothing you can say to make me be quiet about you robbing God. And I'm not talking about no sky daddy. I'm talking about the ones that don't recognize who they are. You're out here buying rings and cars and houses and supporting people. They asking for people to support your lifestyle. And these people are struggling to keep themselves afloat. So the question now becomes, are you living in truth or just tradition? Because if you have to go broke to belong, it ain't divine, and it's surely not serving you. It's Pharaoh dressed up in a gray suit. And if that's the case, then maybe it's time for you to stop robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're out here saying Jesus and God is love. Let me explain something to you, family. Love doesn't require depletion. Sacrifice does not require self-erasure for you to erase yourself. So tonight I want you to ask yourself, where have I been robbing Peter? And what parts of you have you been borrowing from just to keep that alive? We have to stop the cycle. Let's put Peter first. How about y'all hashtag that? Let's put Peter first. Because when you put Peter first, you come back to your body, you come back to your truth and your alignment, the origin. And from that place, love flows without debt, without grief, without the need to pretend, without fear. All things low vibrational. People, answer this for me. Have you ever been in a place where you keep giving, but something in you feels like you're running out? That's what robbing Peter to pay Paul looks like. It shows that when you keep showing up for people, but you don't show up for yourself. Making sure I'm still on here. Turn this music down just a little bit. I start spinning. Welcome in, family. You have been robbing Peter. Have you ever been in a place where you keep giving, but something in you feels like it's running out? It shows up. It looks like when you go to church, giving those tithes, showing up in ministry, but you're spiritually starving. That's robbing Peter. Your core, your center, your soul, just to keep Paul going. Paul might be your image, your responsibility, the role you were taught to play. But Peter is the real you, the one who needs care, rest, healing. But what happens when you keep robbing Peter? Again, you shut down. You get numb, exhausted, and resentful. You disconnect. And we have to stop pretending like pretending that the performance is healing us. That being drained is God's will, because it's not. Listen, it said, "Oh no man, anything but love." Let no debt remain outstanding except the continued debt to love one another. What does that mean, Ty? One would quote scripture to promote selfishness. But when we place it next to the origin of where it came from, we can recognize the contradictions in that. This is how one-sided this system is. Let me tell you a story. I love stories. There was a time I let someone run wild in my palace. Just run amok. So much so that I didn't feel safe in my own spirit. And because I didn't feel safe, I started to question my own sanity. I thought maybe this is what God wanted from me. To suffer, to submit, to stay broke. To stay broke? That's what happened when religion becomes a tool of silence instead of a path of liberation. I had to borrow from Peter to pay Paul emotionally, but I was robbing myself the whole time. What was you robbing yourself from, Ty? Clarity, safety, sovereignty, just to uphold a role that I never agreed to. A role that I was handed down by traditions and not truth. Before I dig into this a little bit deeper, robbing Peter to pay Paul. This phrase goes back. I'm gonna expand on this. The phrase goes back to the 16th century. In one version, it refers to the act of relocating funds from St. Peter's Church in Westminster to St. Paul's Cathedral in London. On the surface, it was just shifting resources. And the other interpretation was more metaphorical, rubbing or taken from one place to fulfill another. Meaning nothing truly got solved, just shuffled around. But spiritually, it's much older than that. Because this concept of imbalance, of borrowing energy to mass dysfunction, didn't start in the cathedral. It started when systems decided that survival was more important than harmony. See, in the Bible, there's a heavy emphasis on being the lender and not the borrower. Where we hear scriptures like, "You shall lend to many nations, but shall not borrow." But y'all ain't doing that. And it sounds empowering, it sounds noble, but what happens when that theology becomes a dominance? It becomes dominance That's what the white supremacy system is. When lending is holy but borrowing is cursed, that's the vision you're painting for people. Y'all are cursed if you have to borrow, but you're gonna twist that too to make it fit because you're doing it all the time. There goes that cognitive dissonance. But anyway, that's not harmony. That's hierarchy. And in ancient teachings of our ancestral foundation, there was no hierarchy without balance. To give and receive, to speak and to listen, to build and to rest, to lend and to borrow without shame. There's no up without down. There's no in without out. Religion didn't give us belief, it gave us imbalance. And when Constantine and the boys institutionalized faith, they didn't preserve the truth, they distorted it. They split the world in two, made one side sacred and the other side sinful. They told us that. Listen to this, trip this. They told us that God gives, we receive. God owns, we obey. They left out the part where God entrusts. They erased the truth that we are co-creators, partners in this divine dance. And this imbalance over time becomes more theology. It becomes psychosis, a spiritual schizophrenia, where you're taught to be all light and no dark. And when you live in that kind of imbalance for long enough, it does something to you. It's not just theology anymore. It becomes psychological. It's a kind of spiritual schizophrenia where you're taught to be all, everything. You're told to suppress your instincts, your anger, your power. Don't get the big head until you no longer know what's righteous and what's religious. You ever hear a person say killing is wrong? But if somebody broke into their house and harmed their children, suddenly the killing don't feel so wrong anymore. Now it's justice. See that's why I love my aunt so much. It doesn't say I didn't kill. It says I didn't kill unlawfully. There's a nuance. There's wisdom. There's balance in that. Because without balance, even truth becomes a weapon. Family, everything that you want to do naturally is downloaded in our DNA. We were born with it, but we keep fighting it. That's psychosis. What is psychosis? I got you, sis. It's a mental state when you lose touch of reality. Psychosis isn't just something that happens in the hospital. It happens when belief systems become so rigid or distorted. Being rigid just means inflexible or unwilling to change and misaligned with truth and balance. And it starts to disconnect people from reality. How does that happen, Ty? Instead of you seeking understanding, you memorize verses. When the leader tells you that what you're questioning, the questions you ask are rebellious. And instead of seeking answers, your doubts are demonized. Even though doubt is the gateway for your faith to grow deeper. That makes reality complex. But a rigid religion will force everything into black and white. It has to be a certain way. There is no other way. So religion will have you unwilling to change from the idea of picking between good or evil, saved or damned. When in reality, you can't have one without the other. And that's binary thinking. And it splits your soul because it demands you reject parts of yourself in order to belong to a system that isn't natural for you. But Ty, I don't see nothing wrong with that. No, you don't. I didn't either. It's hard when you have to think with a carnal mind to understand things both physically and metaphysical. I'm gonna say some things. It's gonna rattle a few cages, especially if you're not measuring your spiritual maturity by how well you serve, how much you give, and how many services you attend. Just because you don't feel like anything is wrong doesn't mean something isn't slowly destroying you from the inside out. I'm not talking about sin in the traditional way y'all think. I'm talking about disintegration. And disintegration just means not connected. Something that was once whole, now it's part. It's falling apart. The disintegration of your mind, of your identity, of your nervous system. The danger of spiritual overfunctioning. Have y'all ever thought about how is it we have never, we didn't have any African studies in school, throughout school? There was no focus, history, nothing in civics about our people. But they fed us lies about Christopher Columbus discovering America. Come to find out when you're an adult, it was lies. The nigga got lost. He was getting lost as he was going on his journey. But they feed you those lies to make you feel good. Right up until your body gives out. Right up until you start snapping at people, crying in the dark and silently resenting people. And don't act like y'all don't resent people, because you do. Even the pastor, oftentimes y'all resent. How he get a new car? I'm telling you from experience. But y'all call it spiritual warfare when in fact it's just overdraft fees on a bankrupt soul. Your soul is bankrupt. And that's the truth. When you're constantly pouring out and never pausing to ask, is God or is this guilt? Is this God showing up in this time, or is this guilt? And you condition your body to tolerate that dysfunction. You teach your heart to shut up every time it disagrees with the pastor. You train your gut to be quiet when it detects something that doesn't sit right with you. You numb your body's warning with phrases like, well, God will bless me no matter what. I'll get it later. It's just a sacrifice. This is what loyalty looks like. Lie, lie, and more lies. What it actually looks like is you burning your internal house down and calling it worship. And let me be brutally honest. They've been feeding us lies from the start. That damage it doesn't disappear because you say amen. Not even recognize you're paying homage to Amun Ra. But that pile up happens in the nervous system. And it shows up as inflammation. It shows up as memory issues and chronic fatigue and low self-worth. It shows up in your dream, in your bones, in the way your jaw tightens every time somebody asks you for one more thing. You start cringing. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. Everybody got that somebody that they hate to see coming, because you already know they're about to ask for something. That's an internalized religious anxiety. Ms. Ty, what does that look like? Religious anxiety. Cognitive emotional signs like chronic guilt or shame, even when you haven't done anything wrong. You go into fear of missing God's will or being out of alignment. You get anxiety about going to hell or being left behind. They made a whole movie about being left behind so they could tell y'all a vision. One would be left and the other will stay. Lies. They wanted that vision to be there to reinforce a narrative that they were trying to paint for you. And that's not what it meant. Maybe we'll unpack that another day. But if you feel like your thoughts are sinful, even the private ones, and constantly you're seeking that external validation from those spiritual leaders, that's what we're unpacking. You, my friend, are robbing Peter to pay Paul. But let's go deeper. How does it show up in my behavior? Compulsion, serving, and volunteer. You know how y'all volunteer and you get to that burnt out place? I remember when we had to travel with the church. We'll go to Sunday school. You know, I didn't even have no job. I was a child at the time. So I can only imagine what the adults were going through, what they had going on. But you're avoiding rest or self-care because it feels selfish for you not to go. You're feeling guilty for enjoying music and laughter and sleep. And I've seen it so many times. I don't listen to secular music. Meanwhile, the music, the gospel artist was making R&B, but putting Jesus in the name of it. So it was convertible. These are the artist's words, not mine. This wasn't originally a church song. This is how it shows up in your behavior. The inability to make decisions without religious confirmation. Panic or fear during moments of doubt. Difficulty not to authorities, not difficulty for authorities, but you have difficulty saying no to them. But that ain't all. Let's expand on the physical and what it looks like in the body, what it looks like in the nervous system. Let's expand on the physical. How tired you be, how burnt out you are. You got digestive issues, can't sleep at night. You got these disorders and this chronic pain that's showing up. And you freeze up when you're asked to speak up or disagree. And just because you've learned how to live with it doesn't make it sacred. Religious anxiety directly fuels the cycle of robbing Peter to pay Paul. In the spiritual sense, you start robbing your own spirit just to stay in line with a system that never truly saw you to begin with. All giver, no receiver, all strong, never broken. And here's the part that hit me the hardest. This wasn't just happening in the church. This story, let me share this story with you. There's this doctor called Dr. J. Marion Symes. He was called the father of gynecology. And Dr. Symes would, I don't know if it's pronounced Symes or Sims, one or the other. But he was performing these surgeries on Black women in the 1800s without anesthesia. And the way that he justified this was by claiming that Black people, especially women, could tolerate more pain than white women could, or white people in general. So of those women, he did at least 30 surgeries on. These women did not consent. They were legally considered property. This is what they were doing to us. And eventually, after him doing it for so long, his counterparts couldn't even stomach it. So they quit because he was doing such brutal actions to these women. So then they made the slaves hold him down while he did these procedures. The pain gap is real. And right now, today, these doctors are still taught that Black people feel less pain. Half of medical, this is studies. Go and look this up. Half of medical students believe false idea that thicker skin or less sensitivity have or less sensitive nerves. That means Black patients are less likely to get pain meds, even the kids. Even though Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth, not because we're weaker, but because we're ignored. This isn't just bias. That's a deadly lie wrapped in a white coat. Those myths that Black people don't feel pain, that didn't just show up in the hospital. That was programming, and religion helped write the script for it. How is that, Miss Ty? Because when a people are told that suffering is holy, that obedience is better than instinct, that your reward is in heaven, you stop questioning the pain you're in right now. Sit with that. So you mean to tell me, Ty, I'm not going to question all this suffering that's happening to me in the lifetime because I know I got something waiting on me after I die in heaven. What about heaven is within me? What does that mean? So what happens? We start ignoring our bodies. We serve systems that don't serve us. We stay loyal to that. We spirit we spiritualize struggle and we call it being faithful. That's robbing Peter to pay Paul in real time. You rob your present self, Peter, your peace, your voice, your body to pay Paul, the mask, the performance, the pastor, the system. And religion, just like medicine, told us to shut up and just take it, to feel less and call yourself a wretch, to speak less, to demand less. But here's the truth, there is no divinity in that. How does this stuff show up in your real life? I'll tell you how I know. How do you know that this is showing up, Ty? It doesn't just start in the hospital. It doesn't start in the church. It starts in the home too. And before I even had words for it, I lived it. Because religious trauma doesn't just sit in pews and pulpits, it sinks into your upbringing. It's passed down from generation to generation, from your great grandmama to your, it hides in sacrifice that look like love, but it costs you. And you learn the pattern early from the people that you love the most. Listen, let me share this. Y'all know I like to share. Welcome in, family. My mother left me with my family, with her family, so she could go off and live with her husband, Fred. And that's where some of my borrowing began. Those experiences. That's when I learned how to trade my needs for someone else's comfort, to be quiet, so someone else could feel whole. So every summer I would visit, right? There was a routine. I had to eat and be out of there in my room by 3:15 because that's when Mister came home. I was taught how to hide, to stay out the way, not to make waves. Even when my spirit was screaming, this man would label his items in the refrigerator with his name on it. Ain't nobody there but me at the time, my mama and him. So I wouldn't touch him. We're talking about a child. And the crazy part is I was already trained not to touch people's stuff anyway, that I was trained not to touch nobody, something that wasn't yours, you keep your hands off of it. And he would go out and buy this food. And when DeAndre and Pookie would visit, they got to roam the home free. They got to do whatever they wanted to do. Me, I had to disappear. I had to make myself unseen. I'm gonna put a pin right there. I remember one day I put a knife on DeAndre and Pookie. Ask them if you think I'm lying. Not because I wanted to hurt anybody, but because I was scared. They were trying to actually come in the room on me. And I was alone. Nobody was at the house but us three kids. Pull a knife on them when they tried. I put something up against the door, and they were still trying to push the door in. So I grabbed that knife. But I was the one that got in trouble for protecting myself. Y'all be talking about testimony, please, please. But anyhow, let me go back to the summer I was talking about. This one summer I went to visit. I remember there was a piece of gum, the little uh, Wrigley's, the one that have, I think, 5 or 6 in the pack. You used to could get it for 25 cents. And I picked it up and I asked Catherine, I say, whose is this? She told me, you can just have it. One slice of gum in a pack. She gave it to me. But when he got home, he saw that one piece of gum, one slice of gum was missing. He barged in the room angry. Where my gum at? Who told you to eat my shit? Exact words. And I tried to explain, I didn't know it was yours. I asked my mama for it. She gave it to me. He didn't care. He tried to jump on me, a child. And I was a little bitty thing then. So I ran to the neighbor's house. And I stayed there until my mama came home. And you know what happened after that? Nothing. And the reason that she said she left me with family is for her to go make a better life for her mama. And back then I didn't understand that. But now I do. I understand it now. That was her way of robbing Peter to pay Paul. She didn't have the internal balance to be whole in every role that she had. So she had to choose one and sacrifice the other. And that sacrifice became my inheritance. A silent inheritance. Not passed down in words, but passed down in wounds. It's the legacy you carry. When no one names, the pain, but you feel it anyway. And once that becomes your first language, you don't even realize you're code switching just to survive. You start abandoning pieces of yourself just to keep the peace, just to stay wanted, just to stay in line with a system that never truly saw you to begin with. Welcome in. Hey, Nada. And you start robbing your own spirit just to avoid being rejected. And it's not just what gets modeled, it's what gets poorly modeled too. What gets omitted, what gets absorbed when love is fractured, what you witness when that's happening. We unpacked that before. But now we got to trace it deeper. Because I didn't learn to be distant by nature. I learned to be standoffish as a form of survival. Not because I wanted space, but because that came my normal. That was my first language. All giver, no receiver, all strong, never broken. And here's what I know now. It's inherited before it's ever preached. Because when I was little, I was glued to my mama's leg. It was my safe place. That was my person. But then Fred came around and he didn't like that closeness. And I'm willing to even say, he probably had some mommy or daddy issues. He told her I was too clingy. Said I shouldn't be all up under her like that. So she pulled away just like that. The warmth that I clung to was gone, snatched away. And I don't believe it was because she didn't love me. because she was trying to hold on to something that promised her more, that promised her help, that promised her child bicycles, that promised to be my daddy. And I wanted that so bad. So I was all in. You ain't have to convince me. But looking back on it now, it was a devil in a suit. And I'm saying that loosely because I know how y'all like to tussle. But that moment taught me something dangerous, that it's okay to abandon what you love, to secure what you think you need. That was one of my first real beautiful experiences of robbing Peter to pay Paul. And it didn't stay in my childhood, it grew with me. It followed me to adulthood, into my relationship, into ministry. Because when your earliest lesson is abandon what you love to survive, you start sacrificing wisdom. You start calling emotional bankruptcy loyalty. You confuse suffering with righteousness. And that's how spiritual debt forms. This is how you end up robbing Peter to pay Paul internally. But let's take it even deeper. That same behavior showed up in the church. It shows up in your Bible. In the very God language you were taught to trust. See, the Bible wasn't inherently oppressive, but it was weaponized. It was colonized. Then they translated it, also redacted it, and then reinterpreted it. All to reinforce hierarchies that never had us in mind. Verses like slaves, obey your master. Pull that scripture out, take it out of context, and sanctify control. Come on. Verses about women, submit and stay silent. Preach to the oppressed, but never practice by the oppressors. No system has done more insidiously than colonized Christianity, filtered through white supremacy. The book they gave us isn't just a guide. It was a surveillance tool, a control mechanism. And those who internalized it didn't just become followers. They became agents of the system, of the same system, enforcing it on each other, silencing one another, and then calling it faith. The church taught us that at a young age. That's a good woman. Good women submit to your husband, not to her intuition, not to her feminine energy, not to the divine within her, not to the nature, but to the man. And following that doctrine, I was suffering. I was with a man that was running women who would take sex whenever they felt like it, like I was a thing and not a person because of this submission. And family, when I say these things, I'm not saying it like I didn't have a choice. But at the time, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know the power that I had within me. This man would put his hands on me, not in a loving way. He would do things to my body when I wasn't even fully conscious. And religion told me that my role was to stay, to sacrifice, to serve. Let me tell you something. That's not submit. That is not submission. That is spiritual psychosis. Because what is spiritual psychosis, Todd? It is what happens when doctrine demands that you betray your own soul, your own self. Family, some of you right now are betraying yourselves and not even recognize it. Topic tonight, robbing Peter to pay Paul. When that pain gets rebranded as purpose, when staying silent is praise, even when the silence is killing you, that's what they used to do to young women back then. Uncles raped them, all kind of stuff go on. What goes on in this house stays in this house. That's the split. And let me tell you what that split feels like. It's invisible to the outside world, but it's a war on the inside. That's what you flexing about. You saying it all the time. I don't look like what I've been through, but you still ain't fixed on the inside. It's still a war that's going on in the inside of you. And you know what nobody ever tells you? That your body, your unconscious, it unconsciously will pick up every crumb. It never leaves anything. Every crumb of betrayal, even before you had words to name it, your body keeps the score. So I didn't just start distrusting men because of one bad man. No, it started way earlier than that. In the empty chairs where a father should have been, in the silence after the phones didn't ring, in the birthdays that were skipped, the hugs missed, the safety that never came. Those were imprints. What did those imprints do? They told me men ain't safe. Men don't stay. Men will choose everything but you. That's not all just trauma. That's training. That's unconscious bias that seeps all the way in. So by the time I hit 19, I wasn't just submitting because God said so. I was submitting because fear had already taught me I'm only safe as the next promise he keeps. No wonder I was walking into a marriage ready to sacrifice myself. It wasn't just doctoring telling me to stay, it was memory. And memory is being left behind, a memory of swallowing my needs to be good, a memory of watching people I love abandon me to feel whole on their end. So what happens when your earliest truth is you're abandoned? You abandon things. You abandon what you love to survive. You start robbing Peter, your present self, your gut, your boundaries. You start robbing that from yourself just to keep Paul alive, the performance, the fear, the need to prove you're worthy of love. So one night I was feeling overwhelmed and I was at a breaking point. So yeah, I grabbed my pew pew. And it wasn't just the rage of that one man. It was a lifetime of being left, a lifetime of broken promises, a lifetime of being told if you can't trust them, you better arm yourself. And that is how you end up robbing Peter to pay Paul. You know why I go so hard on the church? I'm gonna put a pin in that story because I'm gonna come back to it later. I go so hard because the church is the front line. Y'all are on the front line of the battlefield for a white supremacy system. And once you know that, I have mercy for the folks that don't know. But when you do know, and you still get up there preaching submission to systems that never protected us, that's when it gets sketch for me. Sketch, boo. Sketch ain't no. Yes, it is. I can make my own words up if I decide I want to. That's sketch for me. Let me make this plain. I didn't grow up with a real father figure. I have some beautiful men that's a part of my family. But let me say it like this. Not someone who loved me enough to discipline me with love. Because the people that are in my family, they never had to discipline me. So I'm not talking about them. What I did get growing up was a lie dressed up in church clothes. A lie that taught me to sacrifice my safety. That's what happens when you rob Peter to pay Paul. You rob your mind, preaching blind obedience over critical thoughts. I told us, I keep telling us, and I share this with us all the time. We have to use our African mind to think. And we think that that's something small. That is so big. You rob your soul trading spiritual freedom for emotional slavery. You rob your people serving up submission to the same system that enslaved them. You asking me that I should pray for the same God that my oppressors pray to. Make that make sense. You rob your ancestors, repeating the very oppression stolen from Kemet, repackaged in the King James English. When you step into that pulpit, welcome in, family, and preach a story that was colonized, one that was stolen, edited, weaponized, and you know the origin, but you keep preaching it anyway because it pays the bills, that's spiritual death. That's robbery. And that's not okay with me. And honestly, I shouldn't be okay. You shouldn't be okay with it. You might keep preaching the traditions of the elderly Moses, but when those traditions contradict the God within, you're not just mistaken, you're complicit. Because once you know the truth, you can't play ignorant anymore. And they know the truth. They're required to study this. They take an oath. Ask them if I'm lying. They take an oath when they, what is it called? 501c, the church agrees to. They have an oath that they agree to not preach certain doctrines. They have to stick within the script. You don't believe me? Go look it up. You're not just robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're robbing our people. You're robbing our peace. You're robbing our power. And Paul, he's sitting there pretty on your platform, in your pocket, in your prestige. That's why I speak. So the next time you step up to the mic, you know exactly what you're robbing. You know exactly who you're paying. You got to know. And I'm going to tell you. It's crazy that you can love God, show up to church, quote scripture, and still be stuck in the cycle of self-betrayal. And it split me. Let me explain this split. It's not visible on the outside. It's internal. It's soul wrenching. You begin to detach from your own instincts. You start to doubt your gut. Ladies, you know what it's like. You question what you feel. And that's what it looked like for me. I started questioning not just myself, but him. I say to myself, something's wrong. But then I feel guilty for feeling that. I second guess my own pain. I started believing my suffering was my fault. And it was. But I lived in a constant state of cognitive dissonance. If I speak up, I dishonor God. But if I stay silent, I dishonor myself. And it was a back and forth, tug of war between yourself, and it wears you down. And it creates emotional numbness. Because when you don't feel safe, you can't even trust your own joy. Rue just asked me the other day, why do women say a man has to make them feel safe? And I thought I knew the answer. So I gave it, I gave it to him confidently. I have my chest poked out. I was ready before he even finished the sentence. Because that's all I had ever believed, that I needed safety from the man. That it was somebody else's responsibility to make me feel safe. But what I'm experiencing in life, when I was a child, I thought like a child. Now that I'm grown, I got to put away those childish things because truthfully, I am responsible for my own safety. And so are you. You are responsible for your own safety. Safety is foundational. It's your Peter. Come on, Ty. Safety is your Peter. It helps you define your boundaries, your worth, your peace. And the problem is, a lot of us never received that safety. I know I didn't. So why would I expect someone else to give me something not even my parents gave me? Let me tell you something. Your partner can support your safety, but they can't create it for you. Think beyond just physical for a second. It starts with you, because a partner who truly loves you, they don't try to control your safety. They protect it. They honor it. They don't ask you to sacrifice. They don't ask you to sacrifice it for the sake of love. I didn't know that. And I let someone run amok in the palace. And the more unsafe I felt, the more I started to question if I was even worthy of love at all. And I started to doubt my own sanity. I started to think, is God requiring me to stay broken? Because subconsciously, that's what I was taught. Some of it consciously. And whether you know it or not, that's what you're being taught. That's what you're teaching your children. That's what happens when religion becomes a tool of silence instead of a path of liberation. And I didn't just inherit the imbalance in relationships. I inherited in doctrine. I inherited in the traditions of the elderly Moses. I in the unquestioned authority of religion. And eventually I had to stop robbing my spirit to uphold a role I never agreed to. That was the beginning of my healing. And maybe it's the beginning of yours. Because here's the truth. When that imbalance becomes internalized, it doesn't it doesn't just cause emotional pain. It warps your perception of the truth. You stop knowing that you stop knowing what's real. You start living a fantasy. So let me ask you this. If you're always the lender and never the receiver, can you truly know yourself? Or are you just robbing Peter to pay Paul? Beautiful question, Ty. Thank you, Phil. But let me show you how spiritual doctrine, emotional exhaustion, and survival all collide. Not as a theory, but as memory. Let's go back to that pew pew story. I know, I mean, I'm letting the spirit lead me, doing like y'all do. And baby, let me tell you how far gone I was. I had stopped working. He told me stay at home with the kids, and nothing brought me more joy because, I have a desire to be a wife and to nurture my children at home. I had that desire, still have the desire, and me trying to be the good woman, trying to be obedient, even though I had cognitive dissonance. It's me going when you start working, it's me gonna act a fool. So but I quit my job anyway at the mortgage company. I had benefits, I had stability, but I was trying to be in order. And then he took the car and disappeared, gone for weeks. No explanation, no support, no accountability. I had to borrow my mama's car just to get Destiny back and forth to school. Malik could catch the school bus, but Destiny school was too close for her to do that. So I had to get my mom had to come pick me up. I had to drop her at work. She would let me use her car so I could run errands. I could pick Destiny back up. Then I had to go pick her back up from work, and then she would drop me off. I was making it work, but barely. Meanwhile, he was out running the streets, not paying the car note, not paying the mortgage, not paying attention to his family. Then one day he pops up, bold, like nothing ever happened. Repo folks were already looking for the car. And I had a little rainy day fun. And guess what he says? This nigga had the audacity to say, "Can you pay the mortgage and the car note?" The devil is a liar. Yeah, 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 yeah. And the craziest thing I almost did, I thought about it, I thunk about it, and then I thought again. Think, think again. Not because I trusted him, but because I was scared to lose everything. That's how far I was from myself. You get that far gone and you stop recognizing your own reflection. I did not recognize who I was. The person that I was, I knew I had boundaries. And I realized now that I was living in a cognitive dissonant state, holding two opposing truths inside of this one body, telling myself if I speak up, I dishonor God. But if I stay silent, I dishonor myself. These are the conversations you have with yourself, family. That's psychic exhaustion. My body started to break. And one night I almost broke. I almost broke. He came home, as I told you, and he started messing with me because I wouldn't pay that car note and mortgage. Called a sister, trying to tell it on me. I don't understand why people think once I got my mind made up that you can go tell somebody on me. My mama did it too. When Dick called her talking about I hope she told you. I can't tell Nisha nothing. Not when she got her mind made up. And I can't. So he started pushing all these buttons trying to torment me. Follow me from room to room, like a shadow of chaos. I was on the phone with Nikki. She could hear it in the background. Listen, I tell no lies. I may tell a story, but I don't have to tell no lies. My life is good enough. He was hollering, he was raging, tearing stuff up in the house. And I remember I had slipped that pew pew in my pocket of my house coat. I don't know if I was going to use it, but I wanted to feel safe because I was fed up. Because in that moment, I had been so hollowed out, so far removed from my truth, that the only way I thought I could be heard was through violence. That's how fractured I had become. Not to mention his own family. They had the audacity to call me, asking me questions. Why was he down there? Why is he in the Kashada? Ask somebody else. What happened? And baby, I had no more damns to give. But underneath all that rage was something deeper, was someone that was fractured. Because even in that chaos, I realized something looking back that I had been robbing Peter, my soul, my peace, my truth, to keep Paul, the performance, this fear, this illusion of being strong, alive. I had been doing that to myself. Family, when your reality is screaming run, but your doctrine keep whispering to you stay, let me tell you why you can't truly know yourself in that. When you're always the lender and never the borrower, because knowing yourself requires stillness. It requires truth. It requires you to slow down enough to hear your own spirit. But when you're always pouring out, always fixing, always stretching, you don't have the capacity to reflect. You don't have the space to know what you feel, what you need, and what you want. For the longest time, somebody would ask me, "What is it that you want?" And I had gotten so fractured that I didn't even know. That's when you're living in survival, not identity. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you want to do. You don't know. You don't know. And when you sacrifice your safety to maintain that, you don't just lose your power. You lose clarity. And I was lost. And baby, clarity is the crown of a healed person. I'm not just gonna say healed God. Come on, Ty. So here's how I'll wrap this up for you. I'm going to say 5 hard truths I had to learn. And I'm going to get through before 2. 5 truths I had to learn. Safety isn't something you wait for. It's something you reclaim within self. I'm going to repeat that. Safety isn't something you wait for. It's something you reclaim within self. Submission without self-awareness is not faith, it's bondage. Come on. Submission without self awareness is not faith, it's bondage. You're a slave to self. Spiritual obedience should never come at a cost of your voice. If you know something's not righteous, if you know something's not right, and you don't speak up about it, you're complicit, my friend, sister, brother, gods, no goddesses, just gods. You're complicit. When your soul has to scream just to be heard, and you're not in alignment with God, you're in alignment with fear. God did not give you the spirit of fear. And when it has to scream at you, as a result of that, you are out of alignment, sis. Ty, you was out of alignment when you feared those things. When you was robbing your Peter to pay Paul, you were out of alignment. And lastly, robbing Peter to pay Paul will always bankrupt you. So if you're listening to this and you're stuck between silence and survival, if you're stuck between what you were told and what your soul screams for, you know what? Let this be your permission slip. You don't owe tradition your life. You don't owe dysfunction your loyalty. You don't owe broken doctrine your joy. You owe yourself safety, peace, truth. And that's where we're going next. Because in the next episode that I do, we're not just going to be talking about leaving the old system behind. We're going to talk about what healing actually looks like, what it means to stop surviving and start becoming. The next topic we're going to unpack is what the old folks used to say: keep a living. I can't wait till I give y'all this. It's going to be such a beautiful bill. Keep a living. The old folks used to tell you when something you wouldn't listen, and then you were rebellious. They say keep a living. And that's what we unpacking next. So that's it for me, family. Oh, I did that in an hour and 40 minutes. I want you to go out, family, and live a life that is not just saved, but sovereign. Y'all hear that? Don't live just a saved life. Live a sovereign life. Whole, honest, but most of all, yours. Happy, happy Sunday, family. That's it for me.